Hello, and welcome to a new season of the 5-5 Sports Podcast. I'm Aviva Mirsky, and with me, as always, is Evan Newtonberg and Matthew Choi. With the latest season of our Spirit Live radio show coming to an end, we are back with the podcast, and just in time as we approach the end of the Maple Leafs season. As we're approaching the end, we're going to start to talk about the playoffs and the positive outlook of it.
Okay, you're starting with the Leafs, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's not too much to really go on with the Leafs. And I guess such a circumstance of this year where we've had the four divisions and no one's really been traveling. Like we've seen everything kind of being within regions. The Canadian, however they designed it. So we only know really about our opponents until the third round if we get there. If we could beat the Montreal and or Montreal, or would it be who would we play in the first round, Matthew? Is it Montreal?
Or it will most likely be Montreal at the moment.
Most likely Montreal. Yeah. So you're looking at Montreal and Edmonton, two teams that we've seen 10 times this year. So we've had the upper hand on all the Canadian teams. There's no disputing that. I mean, if you can argue the case that the Leafs can get upset by anyone, it would be Edmonton simply because McDavid. But when you look at the full team, when you look at top to bottom, the top four lines and the top 3D lines, the Leafs are so much more balanced. They have scoring from all over the place, and defensively, this is the best I've ever seen the Leafs, ever. As a Toronto Maple Leafs fan for the last 10 years, this is the best defensive side we've ever had. So it's just so encouraging to see what we can do. The only question mark is right now in the Leafs, Zach Hyman and his health. Are they going to maybe get him back for one more game before the playoffs, or is he going to be kind of thrown in there game one? But I have no trust issues with Zach Hyman because whenever he plays, he gives 110%. So no one's healthy at this point of the year. He's had the last 3 weeks to recover from that knee injury against Vancouver. Was it Pearson or Edler that had that nasty hit on Zach Hyman? I'm drawing a blank on which one of the Canucks
I think it was Edler.
It was Edler. So anyways, beyond the point, Zach Hyman's health is going to be a huge question mark because you need one of those guys who's going to do all the dirty work. Pucks in deep, recycling the puck, getting in front of the net, pissing people off, being that pest. We talked about Brandon Gallagher is from Montreal. So it's going to be a huge question mark to get over that first round matchup, whoever it is, because in hockey, nothing's a guarantee. The margin for error is so slim. But throughout the whole season, they've been the best team in the Canadian Conference, whatever you want to call it. So my confidence has to be, sky high if you're looking at it from who's the best team in the NHL. But we saw the Tampa Bay Lightning, what happened to them a few years ago against Columbus. Nothing's a guarantee in hockey. Leaf fans are always going to be, pooping their pants until they actually get over the first round hurdle. But I mean, you have to look at their chances and say this is their best chance they've had to not only win the first round, but to win the second round and possibly a third round and make the Stanley Cup, because it's just all lining up for them. Great team, and it's all up to them now. It's not up, we can only do so much as supporters and see what they've done. It's all about what are they going to do when it matters most, and that's taking the next step in some of these young guys' careers.
Yeah, on paper, the Leafs team is far and away the most it's the best team in the Canadian division. There's no other team that kind of compares in terms of depth, in terms of just who they have on the rosters. Leafs have a complete four lines and has a full set of defense that just they're a deep team. And meanwhile they have superstars like Matthews and Myers to kind of finish the job for them. The question for Leafs is not we're not a good enough team. It's, are they going to repeat the history that we've come used to with the Leafs? Leafs, I think the biggest concern for Leafs fans isn't the team itself, it's the fact that they're simply the Leafs and things just don't happen to go the Toronto Maple Leafs way for us. They had for over the last 50 years. And my biggest concern right now, I'd say, is positive goaltending. Even though Campbell has been having a good season, there are times he's looked pretty he looked inconsistent at times, and Freddie Anderson hasn't been 100% since his injury, and he has been struggling with the Marlies right now. So I think for Leafs to win, they need to have more consistency from Campbell. I think he's been having a great season. But I think he's had to be even more consistent than he has been in order for Leafs to win the playoffs. And like you said, anything can happen, but because it's hockey. We've seen Tampa Bay get swept by Columbus, like you said. But there's no logical reason other than the unpredictability of hockey that the Leafs should not be coming out of the Canadian division, because we are, again, not only one of the best teams in that division, we are on paper one of the best teams in the league.
It's hard to disagree with you on there, and I think you're being a little harsh on Jack Campbell. I think
I'm not being
we
harsh.
all
He's had a great
it's
season.
not it's not harsh, but I think it's a surprise because we all expected Freddie to be the number one goalie. It was just an expectation, and the injury. Nothing's a guarantee in sports. We know that, so it's kind of opportunity taken by Jack Campbell, and he was like 10-0-0 to start. Like he didn't lose, so I think he's done a terrific job in the role that he's been asked to play. You just can't ask much more from a backup goalie who's being thrown into the situation. Now he has a chance to go on a cup run with the Leafs. So I think that I can't pick a flaw with Jack Campbell. I think he's been fantastic all year. He's not been a Vezina contender, but he's been as good as the Leafs could have expected.
No, absolutely. He rose up to the challenge of being a starting goalie. He did an incredible job at that. We're definitely the Leafs should be grateful that they have a backup goalie like Jack Campbell. What I'm saying is, I think he needs to take a step further in playoffs, because I think the goaltending is a huge factor in playoffs. It's going to kind of come down to him to buy the Leafs an extra couple of saves, especially if we get to the later rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, but we mentioned the defense. I think Anderson's never had that defense where you can rely on. I think now you have three lines that you can rely on: Dermott, Sandin, you have Bogosian, Brody, and you have Riley in there. There's no real weakness I can see. Usually with a hockey team, there's a weakness here, there's a weakness there. But Jack Campbell's pulling his weight. The attackers, score whenever they want because you have 17 of them on $10 million contracts. It's just it comes down to the Leafs' will and their belief in themselves, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Obviously, there's going to be moments here and there that's going to define the overall postseason, because that's what it comes down to. You don't win with a little bit of luck. You don't win without a lot of skill. So it's going to be that balance. Can they get that little bit of luck when it's necessary? If they're down 3-2, final 2 minutes of a game 6, they're up 3-2 maybe. Will they push to game 7? Will they get a little bounce here and there? So it's Leafs fans are going to be on the edge of their seats from game 1 to whenever they get eliminated, to whenever they're hosting the Cup. And that's the beauty of hockey. But Leafs fans have nothing but encouragement after watching this season going into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's definitely the most encouraging that's the Leafs looked since 2000 and 2004 or the 90s.
Since 2000 and ever. I mean, when as a Leaf fan could you ever be encouraged? Not really. You could have hope, but encouragement. I mean, especially not in my life. I mean, 04, I was 4 years old. I couldn't count to 6. So forget 04 as, for the new fans. It's all about the next step for the Leafs. And this is the core that they've been building towards. We've criticized Kyle Dubas. We've criticized, Shanahan at times.
You criticized Kyle Dubas.
I have, because I wasn't in love with the Nylander contract at first. They weren't always playing together. I always knew defense had to be a priority because from whenever I could remember as a Leafs fan, I mentioned it 5 minutes ago, defense has always been shaky. For the first time they got defense right, we thought it would be, with Tyson Barrie last year, we thought that was going to be a good addition. Clearly, it was just, $7 million of nothing, because Tyson Barrie honestly offered absolutely nothing.
The only reason we got Tyson Barrie was because casual wage has no trade clause, and that's why.
Yeah, but it was risk reward trade, and Tyson Barrie did absolutely nothing in the year of Toronto, and we all expected the defense to be improved because Tyson Barrie. TJ Brody's come in and he's definitely improved the defense. There's no debating. And Zach Bogosian has done it, and I forgot to mention Justin Hull, who's been really the rock for the Leafs defense, and he could barely get minutes out of Babcock. So sometimes you stumble into you stumble into a gem, which we kind of seen in Justin Hull, an unexpected gem, especially at his age and for what he's actually brought to the team. But all those being considered, Leafs are 18 players deep. There really isn't a hole, and all we could hope for is a good playoff run. And I think that's where we kind of leave off the Leafs, because I think we've established kind of where we are going into the playoffs, what we have to kind of accomplish. We have to get out. The Leafs have, I say we, like I'm on the team, but they have to get outside. They have to get out of their heads. They have to forget whatever has happened the last, few playoff runs. Washington, the first year was great experience when they, just came up short against, we
were underdogs that season. There's no shame in losing.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a fantastic series, and it was almost like the stepping stone to what could happen.
Yeah.
They lost to, the Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah.
So, it happens. I mean, there's a great series for the Leafs, especially for Matthews. The following year, Boston was, a huge learning experience, losing Game 7. There was a moment when they're up 3-2 where I really thought, they could have this in that Game 6. I was thinking if they win that Game 6, they're going to win. But if Boston wins that Game 6, they're going to go up and win that Game 7, and that Game 7 wasn't close, adding to the heartbreak of Boston. So Columbus was, a joke last year. They played horribly for the 5 games. I don't want to hear anything about it. So it's now this year. For a team, for everything to come down to 1 year, it's really what the Leafs are looking at.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And yeah, I think we should leave it
Like,
up there. I
sorry,
think we're in
it's been,
agreement.
sorry. Yeah, it's been like for some teams, it's almost like I'm trying to think of a recent example, either NBA or NHL. You can always compare it to the Raptors. Slightly,
Yeah.
and a slightly less scale because the Raptors had maybe less superstars and maybe slightly less expectation, but it's getting over that hump. And when they got Kawhi Leonard, he pushed them over the hump. But this is a team that's kind of been growing together, a young team, unlike the Raptors, who were experienced and Masai put together, a blend of youth and experience. But the core of this Leafs team is young.
Yeah.
And they're entering their prime. So now is the time where they could stamp their approval on this season's, put their mark on this year and the next, 7-8 years on how serious they're going to be as a team going forward.
I completely agree. And I think we already mentioned this before, but I think gotta give a lot of credit to Kyle Dubas and Sean Keefe. I think, and like I've said before, I think Keefe's system kind of mixed in with the team that Dubas wanted to build. And I think we're like, it's been a long time coming, but we finally seen like the team that the Leafs are supposed to play like kind of finally come to fruition this season, I think.
Well said. I completely agree.
So, Leafs, their hardest the hardest team around to face possibly might be the Oilers, and that's because of McDavid, who hit 100 points even in the shortened season.
Yeah, how do you do that if you're McDavid?
You can only do that if you're McDavid.
When you look at, you can look at, the scale of, sports, and, it doesn't have to be just hockey. When you look at generational talent, look at guys like LeBron James, you look at guys like Sidney Crosby, who've won, who, they've had the potential. We knew how good they were going to be, and they fulfilled it. But what Connor McDavid is doing, it's almost a different kind of special because how unplayable he is. Like, there's no night that he takes off, and the chemistry he has with Leon Draisaitl. McDavid's already, a special player, and Draisaitl's fantastic. When you put them together, when you look at sports duos, you can look at Michael Jordan and Pippen, you can look at all those, successful, championship winning teams that have these phenomenal players. But Edmonton, they've been held back for a while, and they've had this, core for the last, 2-3, or maybe not core, but they've had McDavid and Draisaitl for the last couple of years, and they've, we've talked about the Leafs growing together. They've been growing together, but the difference is Edmonton still has no defense, and their goaltending sucks. And that's what cost the Leafs the last few years. And we admitted it because it's quite obvious when you watch them. Just yesterday, Mika Koskinen, the goals he's letting in, they're horrible. Edmonton, here's what they have to do for next year, because if they win the Stanley Cup, I'd actually be shocked. If they beat the Leafs this year, I'd cry, because I'd just be I hate Edmonton because I don't like many other Canadian teams. Maybe outside of Calgary, I have soft spot for Calgary for whatever reason. But
Jarome Iginla, that's the reason for me.
Yeah, that's a big part of it growing up with, Jarome Iginla, of course. It's just something about Edmonton, and just the way they kind of build their teams and their ownership and their management. Their fans are not. Sorry, Leafs fans, but I'm a Leaf fan, so I kind of get why we're obnoxious. But it's like you hate other obnoxious fans when they're also not good, because it's like they're so similar to you, and you just don't want them to be happy because you're not happy as a Leaf fan, or we haven't been happy in the last decade, or 3 decades, or 17 decades, however far back you want to look at how bad the Leafs have been since 64, or sorry, not 64, 67, since they last won. So when you look at, let's just break down McDavid for a second. What more can you say about that season other than wow?
Honestly, like when people refer to like McDavid, like when we talk about McDavid, it almost feels like what I imagine would have been like in the late 80s talking about Michael Jordan for NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost like he wasn't winning anything at that time, but the way he was playing was just on another level. Like it was kind of like, as Larry Bird said, it was like kind of like a god walking among men, and that's kind of what we're seeing from McDavid. He's this other kind of being playing against hockey players. Like, he's not a hockey player. He is playing a completely different game. He's not playing hockey. He's playing
He's from a
to
different planet. I don't know where they
he's
breed
playing to
this
win.
kid.
Unfortunately, the rest of his team doesn't seem to be that way, but he is playing to win. He's not just playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, I just have Darnell Nurse. Edmonton's defense is just soft and it's just pathetic to watch on a
It's
nightly basis. Like when you have that much attacking talent and you could barely breed success, especially in this division. I mean, you have to look at A, management and B, ownership. Both of them have been subpar for a while in Edmonton, and I'd be shocked if Edmonton fans didn't admit that. I mean, they do. Maybe not all of them, but the vast majority kind of understand what's going on, kind of what's gone wrong for the Edmonton Oilers. But when you have such a generational talent, and it basically stumbled into it because it's a lottery, so it's basically because they sucked so badly for so many years. They happened to
they had
be the
4
lucky one to
first
get this
overall
generational
picks in the
talent.
last 10 years. Like
Exactly. But when you remember how many first overall picks they had before McDavid, it was like, what, 3 of the last 4 seasons?
yeah,
So it's just been a constant, cycle of just failure after failure after failure. And now that they're feeling some success, I mean, their success comes from basically like 3 or 4 players in an 18 team, an 18 like player team. Their success has come from just superstars happening to happen, pardon me, to have fell in the laps of their teams, and they've been able to lock a few of them up, but the rest of their team is so subpar and so like below average compared to those superstars that they can't ever find success. And I think that's a frustrating thing if you're an Edmonton fan. Luckily, I'm not an Edmonton fan. I'm a Toronto fan. So, what luck have I, stumbled into there. But if we lose to Edmonton, I'm going to be so pissed off because that team does not deserve to be anywhere near the Maple Leafs
no, the
come
way
playoff
the
time.
way they've been developed over the last few years, like you see how much like care and attention has been put to developing the Leafs and kind of growing, like you said, growing with that team. That you can't say the same with McDavid. You have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, and you have fewer solid players around them, but like there's no one that can really help make them a Stanley Cup caliber team yet, at least. But I have to ask, with McDavid playing the way he is, who would you take, him or Crosby? Who at
I,
this stage, who is the better
yeah,
player at this
it's a very
stage?
interesting debate because McDavid's only going to get better, and it's hard to not call him the best hockey player on the planet right now. But I think we have to credit Sidney Crosby because I think maybe as Kane, if you're a Pittsburgh fan or if you follow Pittsburgh as I know you do as a Flyers fan, and you're very up to date with the results. I think we've almost forgotten how valuable Sidney Crosby is, not only on the offensive side of the puck, but defensively, what he adds and the value he brings and the leadership. If you're asking me right now, like if I'm going to the playoffs right now, and okay, hypothetically, because just because I'm doing this hypothetically, take out Matthews out of the Leafs, and then plug in McDavid and Crosby because all 3 of them they're all similar caliber of superstar. You're not really going through them. If I was on the Leafs and I'm looking at who would I take for this year's playoffs, oh my, like it's almost hard to not take Sidney Crosby just because of the experience he has. It's not that McDavid, won't be better than Crosby when it's all said and done in his career. It's such a tough debate to have when you look at how good they are, and then when you consider the different stages of where they're at. So I think it's a very tough question you brought up because I think a lot of hockey fans just struggle to answer this question. I think Crosby's value has almost gone under the radar because of the next wave of the NHL superstars and the youngsters have come in, and we've almost forgotten how good Crosby is. But Crosby,
Oh,
to me, is a
trust me,
top
people
2
have not
player,
forgotten.
top 3 player with McDavid, Matthews, and you're a Flyers fan, so maybe not. But I think some fans have maybe forgotten just how good Crosby is and how consistent Pittsburgh has been for the last 10 years. Like every time you expect maybe a drop off from him or from the team, they just get better and better. And Sidney Crosby's always at the forefront. It hasn't always been Evgeny Malkin. He's been there for most of it. He's had guys like Chris Kunitz, Chris Letang, but their levels have sometimes dropped. Especially as they've gone older. Sidney Crosby's levels have never dropped. And the fact that he's keeping Pittsburgh as good as they are, and people are talking about them as cup contenders again, I mean, that's all down to Sidney Crosby, is it not?
No, you make a good point, and like, look, you know, I'm no fan of Crosby, but I'm gonna give my thoughts to a
Sidney
complete.
Crybaby.
Oh
Am
no,
I
when
gonna?
he,
Yeah.
when he first came to the league, every time he would start crying to the ref about every time he got hit by the Flyers, like people, there are few. I probably use the word I hate this player kind of pretty liberally generally, but I
Hate's
genuinely
a
mean it.
strong word.
I genuinely mean it when I talk about Crosby. I hate Sidney Crosby, but here I'll give my opinion, completely unbiased. Crosby is overall like it was an experience like one of the greatest players in his generation. There's no hands down, there's no debate about that. But if I'm thinking about at this moment when Crosby was McDavid's age of who was better, because they both came to the league with so much hype around them,
Mhm.
I would take McDavid because I do think that Crosby at that time had
Mm.
a far better team than McDavid has right now. You know, the other
Yeah,
team that had Malkin as the second line center. Uh, you know, in a few
not
years
bad.
they get
Hmm.
Letang. They
Yeah,
get Mark Andre Fleury was the goalie, who was one of the best goalies in the league at the time. I think
yeah.
Crosby's
Still
path.
is. I mean, Marc-Andre
Yeah,
Fleury is still one of the best goalies in hockey. We almost forget about him because he's in Vegas and he's not in
yeah,
that Pittsburgh core. But Marc-Andre Fleury is. Yeah, I mean, his level really hasn't dropped ever since he got traded from. I mean, he almost struggled in Pittsburgh towards the end because he was competing with Matt Murray. I think that got on his head a little bit.
yeah.
Ever since he had that freedom, ever since Vegas picked him up in the expansion draft. I mean, the first year they made the Stanley Cup, so I think Fleury deserves a little bit of credit,
Oh, he
or
does.
a lot of credit for maintaining his level despite leaving Pittsburgh. Because I almost forget about Marc-Andre Fleury sometimes, and then I realize that Vegas is one of the best teams in hockey, and Marc-Andre Fleury is a big part of is a big part of that. So, anyways, back to Sidney Crosby, but
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that his path to becoming a champion has been a bit more. I mean, McDavid technically hasn't become champion yet, but I think Crosby's has been a bit more paved. Has been a bit more. He had a better system around him that allowed him to be a Stanley Cup champion. I think McDavid is struggling because he doesn't have that. You know, he doesn't
yeah,
have the coaching, the organization that kind of is going to help him kind of win a Stanley Cup. And but if you're talking about as of now, who is better player, I think, or who I'll take for like the Leafs or like for Flyers. I'll just say
yeah.
that I'm not gonna ever take Crosby for Flyers.
Hypotheticals, of course, yeah.
Hypothetical. I don't think McDavid because I think he is just playing on a different level. I think Crosby. I think we've seen players like Crosby before, but he just does it better than any of them. I don't think we've seen any player like McDavid. I think he is on a completely different level.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And the one thing you said about management, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's, one team had been managed better for the last 20 years, and Pittsburgh coming with, or even beyond 20 years. Pittsburgh's always been a fantastic hockey team. So it's really about management. It's about building a team because this isn't tennis, this isn't golf. You're not winning by yourself. It's not you versus everyone else. It's a team, and you can't win with individuals. We've seen the Leafs, try, with the Phil Kessel era, Dion Phaneuf. We tried getting that one big name superstar, and it never really worked out. So I credit Kyle Dubas. Was really impatient with this process of building this young team. I thought maybe he overpaid one guy. He wasn't focusing in the right area over here because Freddie Anderson was always facing 70 million shots a game, and we're wondering why are we winning? It's because Freddie Anderson just gassed after every game. I mean he's been the only goalie in the game that's faced any shots. So of course he's going to be tired. So I think it's been wear and tear on Freddie, but I mean, credit to Kyle Dubas for putting the team together because it's been patient. And it's not easy to have a patient kind of rebuild with Leaf fans because, Leaf fans really are impatient at this point. But credit to them, I think they finally got it right,
Yeah,
or they've been getting it right over the last few
you're
years,
asking
and
for Keith to be
now,
fired after one season.
yeah, I was pissed off at Sheldon Keefe because defensively, like we almost took a step backwards from defensively from Keefe to Babcock. But I mean, with a little bit of an off. I mean, I think it's maybe a bit harsh because of COVID and
Yeah.
different circumstances. But he's had the full year, Sheldon Keefe. He deserves all the praise. He gets all of my praise. And I couldn't be happier with where we are. I'm trying to kind of put together the last few thoughts here, just on these hockey debates. Yeah, the Leafs only have themselves to blame if they screw up. McDavid only has Edmonton Oilers organization to blame when they inevitably lose to the Leafs.
Gotta agree with you there.
That is it for hockey for now. We will make our playoff predictions next week for the rest of the league, but now we're going to move on to NBA basketball and of course the Toronto Raptors. We won't go into too much with the team as they are eliminated now. However, I do want to ask, how do you feel about the Raptors going forward beyond the season?
I mean, injuries played a huge part in their season. Playing in Tampa definitely played a huge part in the season because we all know, how good Raptors fans are and how well they represent the team. And, all NBA teams have had fans. I think we forget that. I guess except for Portland. before I get my facts wrong, except for the Portland Trail Blazers. But, having to play in America, it's definitely taking a toll on them. Not having the Toronto fans behind them for half their games is huge. Injuries, who hasn't been injured on the Raptors? Has anyone not been injured on the Raptors this year? Has anyone been healthy? I know Lowry's been out, Van Vliet's been out, OG's been out, Siakam's been out, whoever they play at center's been out. So it's hard to build chemistry, continuity. I think the one bright spot you have to really look at, or the two bright spots, I'll say Freddie when he was healthy and Gary Trent Jr. If they could re-sign him, that's going to be huge. He's young. I didn't realize how young he was when we first traded for him because I knew just on Portland that he was a valuable contributor when you watch him. But whenever you watch Portland over the last few years, it's always been about, Dame and CJ McCollum. If you want to throw Nurkic in there, be my guest. But it's really, he's really a talented player, Gary Trent, both sides of the floor. And he's embraced the city. You see on social media, at first he was repping, Toronto gear. So clearly he loves the city. He's openly talked about, he finally feels like he's home. So if they can lock up a guy like that, young, who they could really build around, part of the core, then you're really looking at one superstar like Kawhi Leonard, who we saw in 2017 that could take this team to, or 2018, Kawhi Leonard? 2018, I think.
Yeah.
But you could clearly see the talent that Gary Trent has and the talent that the rest of the team has, but we know they're missing that superstar. Kyle Lowry's going to leave, obviously, whether it's a sign-in trade or whether he leaves in free agency. I don't know how it's going to happen with Kyle Lowry, but I'm sure Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster have a plan, up their sleeve somehow because they didn't trade him at the deadline, which we all expected. So yeah, you have to lock up Gary Trent ASAP if you're at the Toronto Raptors. You have to lock up Masai Ujiri as well ASAP. Whatever he wants, give him. If he wants, key to the city. If he wants, the key to the Democratic Republic of Congo, be my guest. Give him whatever he wants. Give him the world. Masai Ujiri, he's not a guy you lose. He's invaluable to the Raptors, and the day they got him was the day the franchise turned around. So they need to lock up Masai Ujiri. So there's a few issues for MLSE to kind of go through with the Toronto Raptors because they're the team that's kind of in that weird state of they didn't have it this year, but can they bounce back in a big way next year? I really think they can. So it's really all about re-signing Gary Trent, and it's about building for the next year or two after that because they have a young core. We forget how young some of those guys are.
Yeah.
So they're really just starting to enter their prime. So obviously it's a tough year for the Raptors, but there's a lot of factors that play into them not even making the playoffs. And I think a huge part of that was injuries.
Yeah, the injuries is definitely a huge part. The are things that stand out to me is one, I think the Raptors need a good new center. We need we lost Ibaka, we lost Gasol, and
come on, Aaron Baines did a great job. I didn't know the straight face. Okay, we need a center. Okay, yeah, we need a center.
I think it goes a little bit understated how important Gasol and Ibaka was to that championship team. Everyone talks
it was
about
understated. I always credit Marcus Gasol.
You always credit, but
one of the only reasons why we beat Philadelphia because he shut down Embiid. He was the one that took the responsibility. I mean, they had the system, we can talk about how they shut down Giannis. It's more of a team effort where they could maybe, collapse the paint on Giannis and they force him to shoot threes and they hit or miss. Again, that was a few years ago. But Marcus Gasol was invaluable to the Raptors, and anyone that didn't think otherwise was crazy. And, Ibaka, he had that defense and he had a little bit more of a scoring punch off the bench. I mean, those two, you really couldn't ask for a better 1-2 punch at center. And then you lose both of them. Serge Ibaka was a bigger loss because, Ibaka was a much bigger loss because Gasol was really starting to struggle last year. And you can see that the age was really starting to affect him. But I mean, he's had a terrific career. And
That's
the
what we
fact that he
expected.
he was able to give that last ounce of whatever energy and sweat he had left into the Raptors postseason run. It's a joy to watch. But the year after, he was one of the worst Raptors players. So it wasn't a huge loss losing Mark, it was a huge loss losing Serge, because Serge has kind of rejuvenated his entire career. And unfortunately, again, he's injured for the Clippers. So Clippers, let's see how much they can get out of him in the playoffs. But is he going to be out for a lot of the playoffs, or is he have an opportunity to come back?
I'm not sure about his timeline, but like,
I know he's been out for a while, Serge, and I haven't been up to date on the Ibaka injury update. But yeah, they need a center. They need to, because 1-2 punch was just phenomenal in their playoff run. I miss Serge a lot. I miss 2018 Marc Gasol, not so much 2019, but we'll see what happens with their Raptors and what they do in the offseason. It's going to be a big offseason. This is like a franchise. It could be a franchise defining offseason if they get it right.
yeah, because this is the first year it's since like the early 2010s where we weren't a playoff team. And I think I think there's one more thing, like, just in order for us to be a championship, we need a quality. We need that top tier superstar. For us to be a contending playoff contending team, we needed DeRozan and Lowry in the primes. Like, I feel like they're in the primes, they're like one tier below a player like Kawhi. I feel like at the moment everyone is kind of like a slight tier under that, and I think people like Gary Trent Jr. as he gets older, he'll have to step up into more of that
but
star
if they
role.
get that piece that complements all these young guys entering their prime, Freddie, Pascal, OG, they can have a special team, because the pieces are right there. If you're looking at the Raptors, I mean, you can't argue that. I mean, they have 4 guys that I could easily rely on going into the next few years. It's about that, that game changer.
Yeah,
with the Toronto Raptors. Can we talk about Russell Westbrook for a little bit? I want to talk about Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, let's talk about Westbrook.
Love it or hate him, Oscar Robertson's unbreakable triple-double record has finally been broken. I mean, what more can you say about Russell Westbrook? Because, I mean, he's gotten a lot of shtick over his career. He can't shoot, he can't do this, he can't win. But, I mean, definitely this year has been the first year where people are starting to look at him, probably because he's been on Washington and they struggled early on. But the last 2-3 months, I mean, people have been, if you've been watching Russell Westbrook, they almost have to acknowledge that the talent is there. And now that he broke the triple-double record, which maybe only Luka out of current NBA players is going to be able to catch him, and that's still a big if, because Russell Westbrook's still going to be playing for the next 5-6 years, and that guy does not take a play off. I mean, he is, hustling from minute 1 to minute 48. There's no stop. That engine keeps going and going for Russell Westbrook. So how would you define his career? Because it's been a mixed career. He's got a lot of hate, but right now he's getting all the praise in the world, and I think there's a lot of it that he deserves.
The praise he's getting this season, it really reminds me of 2015 2017 Westbrook.
2017 Westbrook. Okay.
Yeah, that was the year when Durant just left, and it was kind of all the eyes were on him, and I think that was the one season where he was kind of getting less of that hate. People were starting to kind of recognize him more. I think when he got Paul George onto his team and when he went to Houston, that appreciation of Westbrook kind of went down again. And I think now that it's just him and B on a pretty bad Washington team, the attention is starting to become more positive towards Westbrook once again. In terms of where he's great, I think, unfortunately, Westbrook, he's not going to be considered one of like the, he's not going to be considered one of the greatest players of all time, because like he has just had to do so much. Like,
okay, well, forget players, because I mean, there's a lot of great NBA players. Yeah. Point guards.
Point guards.
Where would you rank my NBA point guards? Would you consider him a top 10 NBA point guard? Because I mean, last year I really would have had a debate with you. This year I almost think it's undisputable. It's tough because he can't shoot, and it's always gonna be his downfall. I was watching the game yesterday, and he had a chance to win the game with a 3-point, or they were down 1. So he had, I think they were down 1 to Atlanta. I think it wasn't 2 because he shot a 3. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, they were down 1. Ball's in Russell Westbrook's hand, and they basically forced him to shoot. And I mean, it was either he was going to score and it was going to be like, the perfect way to cap off, beating the unbreakable Oscar Robertson record. But just I knew the second that ball was released from his hands, it just wasn't going to go in because he doesn't have the best shot. His release, subpar, and that's always kind of been the downfall in his career. When it matters, like he can put up all the stats in the world, but it's not easy to do what he does. I mean, it take whatever he makes up for, or whatever he lacks in shooting ability, and that that kind of scoring in the clutch ability, if that makes any sense. Whatever he makes up in that, he brings in effort, and it reminds me of a less talented Kyle Lowry, because Russell Westbrook's I think a lot more talented than Kyle Lowry. No disrespect to Kyle Lowry, but just when you look at the talent and expectation level that's been put on Russell Westbrook's shoulder, I think it's so hard to not call him a top 10 point guard of all time because of the effort he gives every single night, the stats he's put up. And despite maybe not winning I don't think a championship has to define a player. Would it be nice if he won at OKC? Well, of course, because then, I think he would have had a lot more he would have had a more free career. I think there would be slightly less pressure on him if he got it done there. But I think people will always look at Russell Westbrook and look at OKC when they had Durant, they had Harden, they had Ibaka, and they couldn't get it done. I think a big part of that was Russell Westbrook. His youth, I think all of their youth, but I think Russell Westbrook had a little more experience compared to KD at that time, and especially Harden. So Russ had the pressure on his shoulder. Like Russ was, basically OKC. He represented the team. He was the face of that franchise. And the fact that when they had all that talent and they couldn't get it done and they all left so quickly, it didn't give him a chance to recover. And I think that will always be kind of the thing we look at Russell Westbrook.
What could have been type of situation.
Exactly. What could have been, but to not call him a top 10 point guard of all time, I think would just be a lie. I just think when you evaluate his entire career, when you evaluate his entire career, it's basically an undisputed top 10 point guard when you look at the overall player that he is.
I'll say this. I think I was thinking this over while you're talking. I'll put him as 7th greatest point guard all time.
Okay.
I can name 6 people. I think it's Magic,
100%.
Oscar Robertson,
Yep,
Curry, Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, Chris Paul, and then Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, that's maybe be interchangeable, within a few guys. Maybe Russ falls to 8 or 9 if you want to throw some other guys in there. But top 10, I think he's there. And I think if you're talking about on the same page, because usually we're not on the same page. But I think you're spot on right there. And it's a shame that he hasn't won, because he'll always be his MO. There'll always be what people look at, and people look at the great OKC team. The talent that was on OKC: Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, James Harden. They just couldn't get it together when it mattered the most. It just hurts as an NBA fan, because that would have been a special team to win it. It would have been a deserving team to win it. And they were too young. It was the wrong time.
They faced Miami's Big Three.
Yeah, they had to face Miami's Big Three, and they were close. They were not far off of beating Miami's Big Three in that series. And
they had an unfortunate circumstance of facing a prime LeBron James.
It was just, I think, wrong timing. I think, is that a fair statement for Russell Westbrook? The timing in his career has just been pretty unlucky.
But I think it says a lot when players I think both Jordan and Kobe recognize Westbrook as the player most similar to both of them. And I think if you get that validation, I think that says a lot about you as a player.
I think that's a perfect way to end that discussion. The praise from those two is all you really need. If you're Russell Westbrook, forget the haters. The fact that people have been hating on him for the last decade has been
If Michael Jordan,
it's been kind of sad, but it's a culture of the NBA, as we know. It's a culture of sports.
But if Michael Jordan says tells you that you're a younger version of him,
you can't ignore it. Right? You'd have to be either ignorant or just stupid to ignore whatever Michael Jordan is saying. So some people want to be ignorant and stupid, and they could be my guest. But let's switch it to other phenomenal players, and let's talk a little bit.
Let's talk about MVP debate.
Yeah, let's go into the MVP debate. And I think there's 3 guys that have their hat in the ring. I think there's a favorite in Nikola Jokic. I think we can agree that he's probably going to win at this point.
Yeah.
But can Embiid and Steph, do one of them have a shot to win it this year?
Here's the thing. I think Steph Curry has been the best player this season, but I don't think he's going to. I think Jokic is going to MVP, because I think something that's been kind of common throughout all MVP races, it's that the team has to be a bona fide playoff team. They have to kind of like they can't just scratch into the playoffs. They can't just barely make the playoffs. They have to be kind of like that. They have to be there consistently throughout the playoffs to be winning games. I mean, the comparison I'm thinking of is 2006 Steve Nash versus Kobe Bryant.
Yeah,
The Lakers were like the eighth seed.
that's the best comparison. Yeah, you can bring up. Yeah,
Even though Kobe Bryant was having, I think, a 33-point per game season, and like was definitely the best player in the league at the time. But his Lakers team with Kwame Brown, Smush Parker was he'll only able to drag him to an eighth seed, and meanwhile Phoenix
exactly.
was a first or
Yeah.
second seed, and Nash got the MVP award. So I think kind of similar to that. I think Curry has been the better player this season. He just hasn't had the team around to really be that number one, the top 5 team in the West. I think Nuggets are in 5th place, I believe, because of Jokic.
You're in 4th. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because
that's
Jokic,
an interesting debate. You know what? Curry's is being unlucky to be part of that Golden State team.
Yeah.
They're still in 8th place. He has carried that team into 8th place. I mean, forget 10th and having to fight for the playing game. They just keep winning and winning.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to. I mean, if you look at yesterday, they beat the Jazz by 3. And you all know what Steph Curry's numbers were?
What was the number just?
36 points.
I'm not surprised.
36, 6, and 4. I mean, when you look at the scale of what they've done what Steph Curry's done over the last month and a half. I mean, broken the 3-point record for a month. He's breaking every 3-point record that's ever existed. And his career, I mean, he's still another 8-10 years up in his career. I mean, it's hard to choose between the two because they're two completely different players in two completely different situations. And again, it's almost like that McDavid Crosby debate, and you're almost debating apples and oranges because it's just completely different situations, but they're both phenomenal players in their own right. And it's so hard to ignore what Steph Curry's done over the last 2 months with the garbage that he's been. If you look at the first month or two of the season, Golden State didn't look like they had a prayer, but Steph Curry has. I think when you look at the term MVP, most valuable player, I think it's hard to argue that Curry isn't more valuable than Jokic to what Denver brings.
Yeah.
But Jokic is so valuable to Denver. And he's one of my favorite players in the league, Nikola Jokic. So I think you have to give it to him because throughout the entire year, he's been fantastic. I mean, he hasn't really had a bad game where you can really point to and say, I mean, here's his flaw in his MVP case. There really isn't a flaw to either of those two. It's just I think Jokic is going to get it. Maybe deserves it because of how good Denver has been.
He definitely deserves it. Like I was saying, Curry I think is the best player this season, but that's not taking away any of the valuability that Jokic had on the Nuggets.
It would just be incredibly hard to not give it to you. I mean, it'd be incredibly hard not to give it because in a different circumstance. Maybe it's almost like the Donovan Mitchell, Ben Simmons Rookie of the Year. It's like they both had phenomenal seasons. It's just who edges it, and I guess Jokic edges it for different reasons, for different circumstances. But don't take away anything from either of those two players.
We should talk about Embiid as well, though, because we kind of like slide him this.
Yeah, I mean injuries. I mean, it's not. I mean, he hasn't played enough to be given the MVP compared to Jokic, and I think he's eliminated right there, and for that reason.
Yeah, I think if he was healthy, it'll definitely go with him because Sixers are that number 1 team in the East. But I think just that the injuries just hold him back from there. They knock him off.
Yeah.
So Golden State, they're probably be in the playing tournament. So, and the funny thing is, they might actually.
So yeah, we'll see what happens in Golden State. But with Steph Curry, they have a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's where we can leave that NBA debate.
It's actually it's a segue to one more thing.
Yeah, let's go into rapid fire. Or sorry, to what?
The one more thing you want to talk about for NBA. You said the Lakers and playing tournament.
Yes.
The might face Warriors.
LeBron James is bitching about the playing tournament. I don't get it. Whoever made it, because you're in 7th place. No wonder you're complaining about it. If you have Anthony Davis and the team that they built for you, LeBron James, I'm sorry, there's no excuse. I get injuries have happened this year. I mean, I get the West is tough. Why are you complaining about the format? I mean, they didn't change it half of the season to screw with you guys. It's being there. It was there last year in a different, I guess, circumstance, because they had to work out, different issues, finishing the NBA season. But everyone played the same amount of games. You're in 7th. They're in 7th right now, no?
Yeah.
They haven't passed anyone. Portland still had them.
Yeah.
So yeah, boohoo. I don't care. Cry a little bit more if you want. Beat this. So they'd have to beat Golden. So Golden State and Lakers play. Whoever wins that game would have to face the winner of Memphis San Antonio. So that's where we stand. I'm sorry if you lose to Golden State, LeBron James. I hope you lose to either Memphis or San Antonio because you don't deserve to be in the playoffs if you lose to either of those two teams. Now it's a team you have and the talent that not only he possesses, but the rest of the team possesses.
Yeah, look,
I don't know why he's crying about it. Why?
No.
I mean, what was the exact quote? It was
whoever
like a
whoever
bullshit or
saw this
something.
needs to get fired.
Yeah. How about you get fired for putting your team in 7th place? I mean, look, he's been injured. I don't get the argument. What does that even mean?
No, here's the thing. I don't disagree with what he said, but I don't think he's the right person to say it because he's only saying this because
what he said. What do you mean you don't disagree with what he said? What makes sense about what he said? It just
why is there playing tournament? Like we know why. I know why there was a playing tournament last season because we didn't need to finish the season, but there's no reason why they should have had playing tournaments this season.
Okay, that's fair, but I don't know why LeBron James is saying it because
LeBron should be saying
it. The circumstance was there. We knew what. I mean, he knew what he had to do. I don't think it's a horrible thing for the NBA anyways, because like it's not 1 through 10 has to play, and it's the bottom or not the bottom 4 teams, but 7 through 10. I mean, I don't see a huge issue with it. I mean, I get maybe if some fans don't like it doesn't make sense to some people. Like, okay, whatever. I mean, not everyone's going to agree with every rule that exists in sports, but that's what makes the beauty of sports. But I mean, he knew the circumstance all year. I just don't think he thought he would be in this circumstance, especially early on when they're hovering around the top 3. And then, all of a sudden they get injured, they go on a huge slide, and they're sitting in 7th place, and then LeBron James is probably thinking, oh, I didn't think I'd even be here. So now he's like, well, this is stupid. I'm like, well, yeah, tough luck. No one cares. No one's going to sympathize with you, LeBron. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe some LeBron fans will sympathize with him, but anyone that really isn't like the biggest LeBron fan isn't going to sympathize with him on this issue.
Yeah, I stand by I'm not a fan of playing tournament, but he is not the right person to be making comments like that because like you said, he's only saying it because
he's not. If Donovan Mitchell and someone on the Utah Jazz, sorry for interrupting you, but I have to say this: if someone on like the Utah Jazz is saying it, well, okay, maybe I could take it serious because they're in 1st place. They have no chip. They have no chips, in this debate. But the problem is, the Lakers are in 7th. They are going to have to play it, and they probably are going to beat the Warriors in the first game. Because if they don't beat the Warriors, I'm going to be laughing my. I'm just going to laugh my ass off because I mean, when you compare the two teams and when you compare the expectations of the two teams, if Golden State does win, it's going to be a Steph Curry show. So I really hope that's what happens. We could all hope, but what'll happen? No, but. LeBron, stop crying. I mean, just beat the Golden State Warriors. I mean, they don't have to. It's not like 7 has to play 10 and then 8 plays 9 and the winners. Like, no, if you're the 7th seed, 7 and 8 play each other. The winner is in the playoffs. So it's not that you got to win your first game. You got to be Golden State. I don't know what's so complicated about it. I mean, he has 5 rings at this point. No, 4?
He just got his. No, he's 4.
4th. Sorry, yeah. Hopefully he doesn't get 5 rings. So I think it's just a pressure. I think maybe I don't know if he's feeling his age because LeBron's superhuman, but I think he knows he's getting older and the chances are getting less and less. And I just think the overall season that they've had and the disappointment of being in 7th, I think that's where the comments stemmed from. But overall, I don't care about LeBron James crying over the play-in tournament. I think it's gonna be fun because more basketball and pressure early on. For some of these, young guys to win. I mean, I want to watch in Memphis and Ja Morant and see what he's like under pressure. We saw it a little bit of last year, but I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see guys win pressure situations. And who's to say that the Lakers deserve over Memphis when in reality they have 3 more wins than them all year? I mean, you have to look at it overall. I think the Lakers haven't had the season they expected and are deservedly having to fight for their playoff life.
I mean, they've been injured for like a good chunk of the season, the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's injured. I mean, you have to deal with injuries. And I think the Lakers have been built to be more well-equipped to deal with injuries when you look at guys off the bench that they brought in, guys like Dennis Schroeder. They brought in Montrezl Harrell. Alex Caruso brings that. I mean, they have Kyle Kuzma. I mean, you could say injuries, but at some point, injuries are an excuse for a team with that much depth. And I mean, it's not like they're out of the playoffs, but the team had championship expectations this year. They were the favorites, were they not?
They
then
were
when Brooklyn, since Brooklyn got James Harden, then their name was thrown in the hat. But before then, the Lakers were the favorites because they were LeBron, Anthony Davis, and the rest of the crew. And there's not many slouches. And I mean, Marcus Gasol's maybe had an off year, but I mean, there's not really holes on the Lakers. They have to prove it. If they want to win again, they have to do it the hard way. And that's where I stand in the playing tournament. I don't have an issue with it. It's free basketball. Stop complaining and play basketball. LeBron, people want to see you play.
Can't argue with it there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very passionate about that. I'm a little bit angry about LeBron James kind of running.
No, I get it though, because like he's only saying it's kind of immature to say this. Like
when you said it's the wrong person to be saying that, he is the only person that should be saying it this year. He is the one person that really isn't allowed to be talking about the playing term because he's in the situation. So yes, I think that is the one that is the nail in the coffin right there. That was the perfect. You said that perfectly. He is the wrong person to be talking about it. Let's move on to our rapid fire segment. One of my favorite segments. There's been a lot to discuss. So Aviva, if you want to kick us off.
Yes. So you guys have 15 seconds. I will buzz a buzzer when your time is up. And I have to just get the buzzer on a different tab so that I can control it. While also seeing the questions. Buzzer. Okay. Please, it'll just automatically go. Wonderful. That is your buzzer. Rapid fire. I need to shrink the screen. Okay. First question. Which Canadian team has the best chance at knocking out the Leafs in the postseason?
My answer, none of them. If any of them do, I'd be shocked. So I hope to God it doesn't happen. And yeah, let's pray to the Leafs just do what they have to do. Don't mess up. Please, don't mess up.
Is mine.
Troy, go.
Okay. Well, okay, look, I don't think any team should beat the Leafs, but if it has to pick a team to beat the Leafs, I'll pick Connor McDavid. I'm not gonna even say Edmonton because that team is just Connor McDavid. So Connor McDavid has the best chance of beating the Leafs, but I still don't think that he will.
Fair enough.
Okay. The Lightning started 3 black players for the first time in hockey history. How important is this to the future of the league?
I mean, it's huge. I think hockey has never been the most inclusive sport. Whether it's for money reasons, skill reasons, whatever. I think we're definitely seeing a culture shift in the NHL. It's definitely becoming more inclusive, and I think it's only positive for the NHL going forward to have as many people in the sport as possible.
It's extremely important, I think, because I mean, you said it all, Evan. Like hockey, it hasn't been the best at being a diverse sport. It's definitely pretty dominated towards kind of more just Canadian, traditional Canadian culture, and I think we're starting to see a change.
How important is Cole Caulfield to the future of the Canadians?
Huge speed, skill. He has it all. The 2 games he played against Toronto, I mean, I had nothing but praise for him. He's going to be a future star of this league with another handful of guys that you could throw in there. But we only have 15 seconds, so he's going to be huge. What a talent he is.
Yeah, I think he's the young guy that the team needs to actually build around. I think the way Montreal plays hockey is very I can't probably go too much into this, but yeah, he's going to be really important to the team in the future.
Early Stanley Cup predictions and sleeper pick for the NHL playoffs.
I wouldn't dare pick the Toronto Maple Leafs. Would I? Sleeper picks, I'd go Islanders. I think they maybe had a slower year, but I think they have a chance to be some of the big boys in the Metropolitan. But Stanley Cup, you know what? Without saying Toronto, I'll say Colorado.
Yeah, if I can't pick Toronto, I'll go. I hate saying this, but I think I gotta go with Vegas because they're just a good hockey team over there. And sleeper pick, I'm actually picking Florida Panthers.
You
Early
say.
NBA prediction and sleeper pick for the playoffs.
I wouldn't dare pick Steph Curry in the Golden State Warriors, would I? Dallas and Portland, I think because of the talent they have, I think Dallas, if they get their shooting right, then they could be a big ask for a few of those teams in the West. Sleeping the NBA. Who would I pick to win it all? I said Brooklyn at the start. If they got the big three, I'll stick with the Brooklyn Nets.
Look, if they're healthy, I'm still going to ride with the Lakers. I think that if AD and LeBron are healthy, they're just going to be on another level.
God's on you.
Is there a sleeper pick? I think I'm going to go with. It's kind of weird since they're a sleeper pick, but I do think that not enough people are recognizing them as favorites. So I'm going to go with the Suns.
Yeah, fair.
Is the play in games necessary for the NBA moving forward?
I mean, nothing's necessary. I mean, if they took it away next year, I mean, it's not going to have a huge impact. I just don't see an issue with it. I think it's more basketball. I think it's a chance for maybe a few guys to showcase their skills. And if, something may go right here or there, I don't see an issue with it. So let it keep going. Is it necessary? No, but I would like it to stay.
I mean, you guys know what I don't think it's too necessary. I think it was necessary last year because they need to finish the season. If they keep going with it, I have no problem with it. But I personally don't think it's the most necessary thing.
I asked that question already. How badly did the NBA screw up with injuries and scheduling this season?
So you know what they say, the proof is in the pudding, and the proof is right there. I mean, what superstars been injured this year? I mean, everyone's been injured. It's been disgraced because scheduling was screwed up. They tried playing too many games too quickly, and NBA players felt that. They spoke about it openly in the media, and they clearly screwed it up this year.
Yeah, it was just a bad move all around. There's probably been the worst season we've ever seen injuries, and that was obvious why. I think this was one of the leagues that actually handled it the worst from all the other leagues that came back this year.
Is Tebow to the Jags simply a marketing scheme or a legit move for their roster?
I really don't know. I was thinking about this. It's either it's a business move to get people into the seats for preseason for the rest of the year, or it could be a great way to develop Trevor Lawrence because it really is another QB on that roster. So maybe just experience, maybe it's this or that, but it could easily be a marketing scheme. I really don't know if it's a legit move.
Yeah, I don't know what this is. I'll be completely honest with you. To be honest, I was so confused when I saw the news because I was thinking, why am I still getting news about Tim Tebow? Why is he still a relevant name? Why am I seeing his notification on the score? Like, I don't know what this is.
It's such a weird move, Troy. Oh my God, Tim Tebow. It could be a marketing scheme. It really feels like it, but anyways.
Who's it marketing to?
I'm Jags fans. I don't know. NFL. Who doesn't like Tim Tebow? He's such a likable guy. I know he said rapid fire. I'm sorry, Viva, but it's such a weird guy, Tim Tebow. We have to talk about him. Let's move on.
Will Aaron Rodgers get his way and leave Green Bay?
I hope he does. Let him go to Vegas or something. Vegas, he's not going to go to San Fran anymore. I don't know where he would go if he leaves Green Bay. I mean, the fact that they basically in the last 10 years picked 10 defensive players and only offensive players, backup QB has been pathetic. Green Bay's pathetic. I hope their entire organization feels some wrath with Aaron Rodgers. Screw Green Bay.
I want Rodgers to get out there because I think he deserves better. I don't think he will because I don't think they're going to give him up that easily. And I feel that the only way it's possible is if Rodgers holds out playing, but I don't think Rodgers will do that either because he knows that he doesn't have that many years left as the greatest quarterback in this generation.
Now give your thoughts on how insane Russell Westbrook has been lately.
Russell Westbrook, the crazy bastard. I mean, he never takes a play off. I mean, who wouldn't want him on your team? I mean, he's a guy you want on your team. Similar to Kyle Lowry, gives it his all. I mean, if he has his haters, let him have his haters, but his career has been nothing short of phenomenal. Yeah,
he's gonna go down as like you said, one of the better point guards in history, and he has the validation of the players who came before him as another great. So I think that's literally all that can really be said about him.
And that is it for the rapid fire questions and about it for today. If you enjoyed listening, do not forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you.